Welcome back to Long Delays Hobbies. The month of July has come and gone, which means it's time once again for Hobby Roundup. I spent the first half of July working on these Cataphracti Terminator for my word bearers. I had painted up one as a test at the end of last month, and it took me quite a while, more than I actually thought it was going to take, to paint up all the details. You wouldn't think it would take that long because they're mostly gray, but getting all the edge highlights, the decals, the basing work done took me, as I said, about half of the month. But I think they ended up turning out well. I like the gray scheme for these guys. It will make them stand out against the red that the rest of my word bearers are in. So I'm quite pleased with the way they are looking. So one of the things I ran into was not all of the shoulder pads are the same size, as well as the little shields that are on the front of the model. They're not all the same size. I had originally planned on putting these little word bearer books on their shoulder pads, but I was only able to fit that on a couple of them. Like the sergeant, I could fit it on him. I could fit it on this little guy here, but when I was building it, the book is just a little bit too large to fit whenever the pauldrons are completely surrounded by this trim. So I had to dig out some Salamanders decals that I had from the Saturnine set and trim off the last one to turn an 18 into a 17 and put that on the pauldron. It doesn't look perfect. It doesn't look exactly as it would if it were something that was created exactly for word bearers by Games Workshop, but I still think it turns out all right. I wanted to make the Terminators, as well as my entire word bearers army look not quite so chaosy. I want them to look as if they are just about to turn to chaos, or they're just about to turn traitor, or perhaps maybe they are still loyalist. There's a couple examples in the books where the word bearers are kind of indecisive about whether or not they want to actually follow Lorgar, and they're still kind of making up their minds. So I wanted these guys to kind of represent that. And after having spent so much time working on those Terminators, I wanted to pull out a model that's been sitting in my backlog a while, but that I really wanted to work on, which was Gandalf the White. I had painted up the plastic Gandalf the White several years ago, but this one is a model that I really kind of prefer to that newer one. I like the posing better, and it's just from the scene where he's charging out of the gates of Minas Tirith and he's fighting against the Witch King flying around on his fell beast. It's a metal miniature, it has some heft to it. I primed it white. I'm gonna probably put together a video on how I painted him. It's not actually that complicated or difficult, but a lot of people find it challenging to paint white. I think it might be helpful to actually put together a video on him, even though it's only really a handful of colors. But altogether, I think it turned out pretty well for being a white miniature. I don't see any chalking as far as I can tell. I think overall it's ready for the tabletop. And after I painted Gandalf, I painted up this Haldir. This is a miniature. I honestly don't even remember where I got this. I think I got it as prize support for a tournament several years ago, at least 2.5, maybe 3 years ago. They were just kind of giving this guy away, so I said, yeah, sure, I'll take him. I don't have any other Lothlorien miniatures other than this guy, which is why he's just been sitting in my backlog for years. But I wanted to just paint up a character. After painting up all those Terminators, I wanted to just sit down and knock something out that I could paint within a day or two. And that's exactly how long it took me to paint this guy. I painted him in, I think, a day and a half. For the basing scheme, I just took some leaves that I bought from Amazon. These are great, by the way. There were some that are green, yellow, and then there are others that are like yellowy green, and just, dump them all over the base. But if I ever do get into Lothlorien, this is the scheme I'm planning on using. I am now strongly considering getting some more Lothlorien, because I would like to run Defenders of Helm's Deep, where you can include up to 33% of Lothlorien in your army, and I do have now a decent amount of Rohan on foot. I have Theoden, I have, of course, Aragorn, so I think I have kind of the basis of... I have Haldir, obviously, now. So I have the basis of a the defenders of Helm's Deep army, and that's kind of my favorite part of Rohan in the trilogy, is that scene of where they're defending Helm's Deep. So, and the MTO for the metal Lothorian archers was just announced. So I think I'm probably going to order at least one set of the Lothorian archers there and get started on a new army. So if you've been watching the channel, you know that I have picked up the Hill Tribesmen commanders. So the banner, Warhorn, and the Oathmaker, which can also be built as a chieftain. The chieftain slash Oathmaker in particular, I think, was a really nice model. I found out after I built him that he's also really easy to magnetize. Not a big deal. I'm not usually a big fan of magnetizing stuff anyway, but just if you're aware or if you're interested in that, he's fairly easy to magnetize. I painted on the banner kind of a very basic crow pattern. It's supposed to be a crabine. I didn't want to do anything too fancy. I didn't think Wildmen would do anything very fancy anyway. I'm not the greatest at freehanding to begin with, but I did want to hand draw something or freehand something just because I think it looks a little bit more authentic on a banner rather than getting like a decal. So I think that turned out all right. It turned out pretty much exactly where I wanted it to be. And then we have the Warhorn. I think this actually might be my favorite of the three. He's a little bit simple, of course. He is just a dude with a horn. He's going to be the one we see the least often, of course. You're probably not going to be taking him because he's too expensive nowadays, but it's still a great sculpt. And to go along with those commanders, I painted up the last of my Hill Tribesmen that I had in my backlog. I've had these ever since the Battle of Edoras box came out in 2024, so like a year and a half ago. So I had 8 that I hadn't painted yet. So I just went through and painted the last of them. So I think they turned out all right. I now have no backlog for my Dunland. I've got the 24 painted, as well as the heroes that came in that box, Wolf and Targ. And Freka, I also picked him up afterwards and painted him. So I've got now a decent sized Dunland army with the commanders, Wolf, Targ, Freka, 24 Hill Tribesmen. I probably want to get another box because they're so cheap. I don't think that 24 is enough to make an 800 point list, at least not a good one. I might be able to get to 600 points maybe, but I want to get to 800 points eventually. So I probably need one more box of Hill Tribesmen. I'm going to probably do that after I finish one of my other projects, like my Harad project. That's everything that I got painted this month. As you can tell, after I finish those Terminators, I kind of focused on Middle Earth for a while. I tend to go back and forth in between Heresy and Middle Earth. So I painted a lot of Middle Earth after I got those Terminators done. After I finished those Hill Tribesmen, I went back to painting some Heresy. I wanted to knock out that Kratos tank that I picked up about 2 or 3 months ago. So I've been working on getting my base coats down. I'm hoping to get the base coats done in the next week or two. The turret is a separate piece, so I can paint it separately and take it off if I need to, just to transport it. But I've gotten most of the base coats done on the main chassis of the tank. The weapons and so forth can actually come off if I want them to, but right now I'm just leaving them attached just to make sure I don't lose them. I'm really bad about losing pieces or whatever if I start taking them off and leaving them places. So I'm just going to keep them attached. I am starting to work on the reds. I think are looking pretty good. I think there might be some places like in the more shadowed places or hard to reach places that might need another coat. But overall, the reds are looking okay. The silvers is what I'm working on now. You can see I'm kind of halfway through. The left tire tread is more or less done. I'm going to be working on the right tire tread, as well as like the little silver bits on the glass cannons and so forth. The tank turret, it's obviously looks very incomplete, but I've only put down 1 coat of red. And so I need to start doing a lot more work on that, since the chassis is coming a little bit closer and closer to being done. So need to put a little bit more effort into that, but that's kind of where I stand on that. Overall though, I think it's coming together. I was very concerned when I kind of committed to starting to paint it by hand, but at the same time, I do think it's going to end up looking all right, especially once I start putting decals on it. the decals, as I learned when I painted my Rhino, the decals kind of hide a lot of flaws, is what I've kind of found. Once I start putting little stickers that say like 17 and word bearers and all that stuff everywhere, the little flaws that happen whenever you hand paint something, you won't even notice because you'll be paying more attention to the decals and everything. I think it'll end up looking pretty well. Hopefully next month I will have this done and you can come back and see how this thing looks. And after I'm done with that, I am still trying to decide if I want to paint up the remainder of my breachers. I have 5 more breachers left to paint. It's also likely that I will want to go back to painting Middle Earth for a while, because I like to go back and forth whenever I kind of get burned out by painting one system. I go to painting another system. And I might want to paint just some Middle Earth heroes. I still have like an Elrond sculpt I want to work on. Eldadon and Elro here I've had for a while and just never painted them. So I also have a Sauron the Necromancer sculpt. I have some conned horsemen that I've been trying to find an excuse to work on. I don't really have a good excuse to work on them other than the fact that they are in my backlog and I want to work on them. But they're some nice models. I have, I think, 9 or 10 of them that ultimately I need to do. I'll probably break them down into half. If I have 10, I'll do 5 and then do another 5 at some other point. That might be the next thing I work on after I do my Kratos tank. So I already mentioned that I bought the Dunlin Command set that was released in the middle of July. The other thing I picked up was that I bought some of the items from the Isengard MTO. I bought the battering ram, as well as one of the captain sets, the command sets for Isengard. Now, I don't actually have an Isengard army, but the battering ram I thought was just really nice looking. It's a model that they used to sell, I think, on general release, or you could just order it off of their website, but they don't actually offer it anymore. Now you can only get it on MTO. The commander I got was still a helmeted one. I'm kind of now looking at starting another army probably next year, because I finished up my Dunlin project. I'm hoping to finish up my Harad project next year. So that kind of leaves me in a place where I still have one other project I want to finish up, which is my con project. But I am now looking at, okay, what other project can I start? Which Isengard is probably where I'm going to go. And that just about does it for this month's Hobby Roundup. I feel it was a fairly productive month. Not the most productive month I've ever had, since I spent half of it working on Terminators. But at the same time, I feel like they are Terminators. They're kind of an elite unit. I didn't really feel too bad about spending half of the month working on them. What did you get done this month? Was there anything that you finally knocked out of your backlog? Like my Gandalf or my Haldir, which literally have been in my backlog for at least 2 years, maybe longer. Or did you knock out some unit like my Dunlin Commanders, which I bought last month and finished it last month? Let me know down in the comment section below. Thank you very much for watching this Hobby Roundup video. If it's not too much trouble, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe on your way out. And most importantly, don't forget to have a great day. Take care.